Welcome back. ECOWAS leaders earlier today directed the immediate activation of a military intervention against the Republic of Niger's military junta. The resolution by ECOWAS leaders was reached at the extraordinary summit on the political situation in Niger. The summit was attended by 8 leaders of member countries and foreign ministers of Liberia and the Gambia in Abuja. Leaders have also called on the African Union and partner countries as well as institutions to support the resolution taken by the sub-regional body, while adding that all efforts made to dialogue with the military junta have been defiantly rejected by the coup leaders. Now, Politics HQ tonight, I have with me Ademola Banyole. He is a political analyst. He joins us from the United States of America, precisely Boston, Massachusetts. Good evening to you, Ademola. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Right. Also joining us is an expert on conflict, organized crime and security governance in West and Central Africa. Dr. Wale Ojewale is his name. Dr. Ojewale, good evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's set the ball rolling. What do you think of ECOWAS's decision to intervene with military action? And this intervention we're hearing is with immediate effect. I'll start with you. Bayonle.
Okay, great. Well, I think it's actually sad we have to get to this. I understand that the ECOWAS might not want to be act like a toothless dog or quickly lose its reputation. I am aware that they've actually served Niger an ultimatum, and they have also tried to have dialogue with the military guys. So in order to keep its reputation, I understand the fact that they are probably now moving in. I don't think that's the best decision, or that is what everybody is looking forward to. There are definitely consequences to that. But I mean, in their intelligence, I hate people now moving and deciding, 8 countries now meeting and deciding to move in with their military power. I mean, we've seen Nigeria cut off electricity. We've seen a couple of sanctions, and I think the feedback we're getting from Niger is grandstanding. So at this point, activating the military arm might not be too far off from the options they have on the table.
All right, and over to you, Ojewale. What's your view on this development?
Well, I think I believe so strongly that the diplomatic option is still open. So what you saw today, it's what I think in the realm of military they call strategic ambiguity. Because definitely if you are going to carry out a military operation, nobody fixes a date or time when such operation is going to be carried out. So I believe, irrespective of what they have read as a communique today, we actually need to listen beyond what they did not say. So I believe so strongly that the diplomatic option is still very, very strong on the table. And I am optimistic that that is what is going to prevail on the long run. I do not see ECOWAS invasion of Niger right now, or even in the few days ahead. Because look at the caliber of people that attended the meeting today. I believe they are suing for peace. And at some point, the junta and the ECOWAS heads of state are going to meet at a midpoint. There's going to be shifting of grants from both ends. But by and large, the news that was actually out a few hours ago, I think it's about strategic ambiguity and posturing that indeed ECOWAS is capable of invading that country if they choose to do so.
All right. When you say strategic ambiguity, are you saying that ECOWAS doesn't really mean to invade, but wants to pass a message to probably prod on the junta to think twice and be open to a diplomatic solution? Is that what you mean?
Yes, because the fact that ECOWAS has not attacked or carried out invasions should not also be taken for granted. It is not that ECOWAS is incapable of invading the country, but I think, you know, in what strategy you look at the potential consequences of your action, and you ask yourself, the potential humanitarian crisis that will ensue if ECOWAS decide to deploy force in Niger, What is that compared to the democracy that they actually want to restore in the country? Because it is the poor people that are going to bear the brunt of it. Over 1 million Nigerians are already displaced into Niger. Some of these countries that want to also deploy force are battling with multiple insurgencies. Even in the recent time, there has been jihadist incursion into the littoral state of Benin, Togo, and then even on the corridor of Ghana and Burkina Faso, there are terrorist groups that leave Burkina Faso and come to attack in northern Ghana. And military, the defense and military forces of each of these countries are already preoccupied. So I believe ECOWAS is going to take measured steps, but the fact that ECOWAS has not attacked or it may not attack must not be taken for granted. That is what I'm trying to say.
But we hear that whilst this meeting of the ECOWAS heads of state and government was going on, the Niger junta was also forming its cabinet to sort of break the news at almost the same time. What's your view of this?
Well, you also know that what is going on, there is a lot of mind calculation and mind game in all these things. And I believe on the long run, what the junta wants is the transitional government. And that is the reason why you see that they are trying to give some semblance of a civilian co-optation into what they are doing, like the appointment of the prime minister. So there's a lot of military mind game that is going on now. But on the long run, what ECOWAS wants is the restoration of democracy. The big question on the table now is whether Bazoum is going to be restored or is going to be sacrificed. That is the truth.
What response do you expect from the soldiers, the military junta in Niger, with this latest communique by ECOWAS saying that all options are still on the table and ordering a standby force to be put in place? What kind of reaction would you expect, or do you think will come from the coup leaders?
Well, the only option that the Niger junta has is the defensive option. They do not have the capability to strike or attack any of the country, particularly now that it's a formidable force that might likely come against them. And based on evidence, the military capability index, Niger is nowhere to be found compared to where any of these major powers in West Africa. So I think their readiness is only going to be for defense. There's no any other option that they have rather than that. But in terms of military might, Niger is nowhere to be found. But the only thing is that you can only predict the beginning of war. Nobody can tell how it's going to end. And I think that is the reason why ECOWAS is taking some measured steps to continue to explore the diplomatic option and negotiation.
All right. I mean, so it could be argued that, exploring the diplomatic option, even for the junta, would have been a good way to even buy time and stall things and, try to legitimize themselves if they're allowed to attend ECOWAS meetings and all that, for photo ops and all that. Why do you think they had this very hard line approach to the visits of the ECOWAS delegation sent there right from the day after the coup till now?
Yes, because I also believe they also carried out their own strategic plan and they assessed what was the response of ECOWAS in Mali, what was the response of ECOWAS in Guinea, what was the response of ECOWAS in Burkina Faso. And they probably think in all these experiences that I just cited, ECOWAS only talk and really didn't really use or deploy force in those countries. That probably is one of the calculations that they have also made. And I think the tide of local politics is actually favoring them because of the politics that led into the coup in the first place, the ethnic issues that have been found, coupled with the anti-French sentiment that they are finding out to be able to secure, to buy legitimacy from the people. So to a large extent, they are trying to see the possibility of how much of the Nigerians that they can have on their side on the street protecting in terms of pro-coup and all those things, and to quickly use that opportunity to consolidate actually. But I think on the long run, they are also hoping that probably they might be able to negotiate for a 12 to 18 month window of transition. I think that is their strategic objective really, but not they know right from their planning phase of the coup that the ECOWAS is not going to tolerate a prolonged military incursion into politics in any country in West Africa. I think that's a cardinal point of departure for them, even when they are planning their coup.
All right. ECOWAS has imposed sanctions on Mali, on Burkina Faso, and I think on Guinea, and this has not in any way forced the coup plotters there and the hunters there to rescind and to turn around and hand power back to civilian administrations they kicked out. Can anyone blame the ECOWAS, leaders for looking at this, taking this hard stance and insisting that all options are on the table, looking at the fact that, sanctions and all that may not necessarily force the hand of these soldiers to return power to the civilians?
Sanction is going to force their hand. It's just that it has started biting. ECOWAS supply electricity to the country, and I think about 75% of that is already cut off. Niger's trade is woven around neighboring countries in terms of access to ports, importation and all these things, border closure. A lot of the economy is also intertwined with their former colonial master. So the more these sanctions are placed on the country, the more it continues to bite and bite harder. So I think what ECOWAS want to actually do is to push them to the precipice against the people by the time and I think it has started yielding results, really, because from covert information available at my disposal, I think the elite in Niger are actually reaching out, negotiating with the junta, also negotiating with ECOWAS, ECOWAS, and Nigeria in particular, which shares a major boundary. And the breaking news yesterday of former Emir of Kano and former central bank governor meeting the junta, I think it's a breaking of the icing on the cake, and that shows that there's a path to negotiation. And I largely believe because of our cultural homogeneity along that corridor of Nigeria border, it's the same people that you find on both sides of the border. I think to a large extent, there is going to be some sort of continuing engagement to sue for peace in the country, even though a lot still appear at embryonic stage now. But the junta are also going to place their demand on the table. ECOWAS will listen to them. ECOWAS will also state their terms and conditions. And then we'll find a midpoint, because you ask yourself, what is the cost of potential humanitarian consequence of a full invasion of Niger compared to the democracy that ECOWAS is trying to restore in the country? I think these are some of the forces of reason that they are going to bring to the table.
Okay. Before I go back to Ademola, Wole Ojewole, you were still saying that as far as you're concerned, this may just be for sort of strategic deterrence, of sorts to show them, we are coming, you have to do something. And I want us to look at a similar situation, what happened in Gambia, where there were actually ECOWAS troops with boots on the ground on their way to the presidential palace when the then president, Yahya Jammeh, ceded power to the winner of the election. What similarities and lessons can we draw from that? Because we know that before a shot was fired, Yahya Jammeh gave up power, and handed over to the winner of the election. So what similarities can we and also lessons can we draw from the Gambian experience?
I think there is a little similarity between the both countries and the experience that actually led to deployment of force into Gambia. Don't let us forget, although I don't have that geographical number in terms of the size of Gambia, probably Niger is maybe 20 times the size of Gambia, and that is going to become an uphill task for military operation when you compare the Niger experience with Gambia. And I think the second thing is the fact that in Gambia, election held, and the loser didn't want to vacate power. So he had everybody against him. In this peculiar situation is a clash of ideas. You have an idea of democracy, about 10 to 11 countries standing for that, and then the idea of authoritarianism by military incursion into politics. About 4 countries are now lining behind that idea now: Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And they are saying if you come to attack this time around, any attack, any invasion against Niger is a collective attack on all of us. Probably they are also going to contribute force to the defense of Niger. We can't rule out that possibilities. But these are the intricacies and dynamics that ECOWAS have at hand now, compared to when you also look at the volatility of Sahel itself. with the multiple layers of insurgencies that have been subsisting in that region for a long while, I think it's a convoluted state that ECOWAS would want to be very, very careful to venture into full invasion or maybe clinical invasion in that country now. And that is what has played out now. You've heard a lot of people across the countries, whether in Ghana, in Nigeria particularly, saying, no, don't let us go the way of invasion. Let us continue to sue for peace. So I think the dynamics are different. Gambia relatively had nobody supporting supporting or maybe making military rhetorics to support what played out in Gambia then, which was a potential democratic coup. But the coup in Niger now was actually staged by soldiers. And then it throws up a different dynamics into the mix.
All right. Very interesting. Dr. Wole Ojeole, expert on conflict, organized crime and security governance in Western Central Africa. Thank you so much for your time.